Here is a specific kind of loneliness that comes with being a delivery driver. It is not just the solidity of the car or the hair spent storing at the yellow lines of the highway. It is the realization that you are merely a ghost passing through the lives of others. You stand on their porches, you glimpse into their lighted living rooms, and then you vanish back into the dark. You are essential, yet invisible. But sometimes, when you drive along the road starts to blur. The maps stop making sense, and you find yourself delivering something that should never have been moved to a place that should not exist. Welcome back to the logs. I am the Mistress Namit, and tonight we are opening a file that was recovered from a dashboard camera found in a Raven Arvin. If you want to keep these logs open and support the investigation into the unknown, leave a like and subscribe to Grimrelit Likes. Let me know in the comments which story kept you up tonight. Stay safe. Now, let us access the entry. Part 1. The Ghost Block. The rain in the Pacific Northwest does not wash things clean, just makes everything heaver. It was 4:45 p.m. on a Tuesday in late November, and the sky was already the color palm. Elias sat in the front seat of his 2015 sedan, the engine idling just enough to keep the heater running. The rhythmic trum of the windshield wipers was the only sound in the world. Swish, click, swish, click. He was parked in the overflow lot of a sprawling distribution center, the kind of place that looks like a pricing for car bar bosses. His phone was mounted to the dashboard, the screen glowing with the harsh white light of the delivery app. Elias stared at it, his thumb hovering over the refresh button. It had been a slow week. The algorithm was punishing him for declining a route 3 days ago, and now he was scraping the bottom of the barrel, waiting for crumbs. He tapped the screen. Nothing. He tapped it 18. The spinning circle mocked him. The car smelled of stale coffee and damp upholstery, the scent of a life in transit. Elias rubbed his eyes. He was tired. Not just sleep deprived, but dip in his bones tired. He was thinking about calling it a night, maybe going home to hit up some frozen dinner and stare at a wall, when the phone let a sharp. It was a sound he had never heard the app make before. Usually, it was a soft ping or a vibration. This was a digital shrike. He looked at the screen. A single offer had popped up. It was pausing in red, which was new. Usually, the offers were green or orange depending on the demand. This was a dip crimson red. The details were sparse. One package. One stop. Total distance, 42 miles. Elias squinted at the pay. He assumed it was a glitch. The number read $300. For a 40-mile drive, the algorithm usually offered 20, maybe $30 if the weather was made. $300 for a single package was impossible. It was what drivers called a ghost block, a system error that you had to grab before the server corrected itself. If you accepted it, they legally had to pay you. He didn't hesitate. His thumb smashed the accept button. The screen loaded for a second, spinning, and then a green checkmark appeared. Row secured. Elias let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. $300. That was rent. That was groceries for 2 weeks. He put the car in drive and pulled out of the parking spot, his headlights cutting through the sheets of rain. He drove around the back of the warehouse to the loading bay. Usually, at this hour, the bay was a hive of activity. Forklifts beeping, conveyor belts roaring, shift managers shouting over the noise. But tight Bader 4 was open, and it was quiet. Here was just one guy standing there. He was an older man, wearing a high-visibility vest that looked 2 sizes too big. He was holding a clipboard and looking out at the rain with a blank expression. Elias rolled down his window. The cold, wet air rushed in, chilling the sweat on his forehead. Name, the man said. He didn't look at Elias. He just stared at the headlights. Elias had picked up the single block. The man finally looked down. His eyes were murky, tired. He scanned the clipboard, running a dirty finger down a list of crossed-out numbers. He stopped at the very bottom. Route 9, the man muttered. Elias frowned. Route 9? I thought the zones were numbered by zip code. The man didn't answer. He turned around and walked into the shadows of the warehouse. He returned a moment later carrying a package. It was small, maybe the size of a shoebox, but it was wrapped in thick, brown butcher paper. Here was no shipping label, no barcode, no QR code, just a set of coordinates written in thick black marker. 47 degrees north, 123 degrees west. The man had it through the window. It was lighter than it looked. It felt almost empty, like there was nothing inside but air. You have a center. Elias asked, holding up his phone. I need to send it to start the trip. No skin, the man said, his voice raspy. Just drive. The app knows. Elias looked at his phone. Sir, I know. The status had already changed thee to in transit. The GPS line was a straight blue arrow pointing directly to the heart of the Olympic Peninsula. Drive safe, the man said. He stepped back and hit the button to close the bay door. Metal gate rattled down, shutting with a clang that echoed like a cellar closing. Elias placed the package on the passenger seat. He stared at it for a second. It looked innocuous, just a brown box. But the silence in the car felt heavier now. He put the car in reverse, swung around, and headed toward the exit. As he merged onto the main road, leaving the industrial park behind, he glanced at the estimated arrival time. The GPS said 1 hour and 12 minutes. He turned on the radio to drown out the sound of the rain. The local pop station was playing something upbeat, a song about dancing in the club. It faltering, artificial. Elias turned the volume down until it was just a murmur. He reached the on-ramp for the highway and exited. The city lights began to fade in his rearview mirror, replaced by the encroaching darkness of the tree line. The further he drove, the fewer cars he saw. By the time he passed exit 104, he was the only vehicle on the road. The readout on his dashboard clock flickered. 5:15 p.m. It was fully dark now. The headlights caught the reflectors on the road, creating a hypnotic rhythm. Zip, zip, zip. Elias glanced at the passenger seat. The package shifted slightly. It was now angled toward him, as if it were watching him drive. He felt a foolish shiver run down his spine. It is just a box, he told himself. Just a 300 box. But as he approached the turnoff for the rural highway that would take him into the mountains, the radio signal began to degrade. The pop sound slowed down, the voice warping and stretching, before dissolving into a wash of white static. Elias reached out to turn it off, but the static spiked in volume, a sudden scream of electronic noise. He jerked the wheel, swerving slightly into the shitter before correcting. He slammed his hand on the power button, killing the radio. Silence returned. But it wasn't the same silence as before. The hum of the engine sounded distant, muffled. The rain on the roof sounded like fingers tapping, trying to get in. Elias looked at the GPSs. The blue line was no longer following the road. It was drawing a path through the gray arcs of the map, the place where the streets had no names. Turn left in 2 miles, the automated voice said. It sounded clearer than usual. Crisper. Elias gripped the steering wheel tighter. His knuckles were white. He was leaving the world he knew. He was heading toward Route 9. The turnoff was easy to miss. It was barely a road, more of a scar cut into the tree line, marked only by a leaning wooden post that had long since lost its reflector. As I turned the wheel sharp left, the tires crunched violently, the smooth hum of asphalt zipping way to the jarring rattle of loose gravel impactor. The headlights bounced against the wall of trees. These were not the polite, trim firs of the suburbs. These were ancient ants, their branches interlocking overhead to form a suffocating tunnel. The moment I entered, the rain stopped hitting the windshield. Canopy was so thick it caught the deluge before it could reach the ground, turning the heavy downpour into a sporadic, heavy dripping. Flip, flip. I checked the speedometer. I was doing 20 miles per hour, but it felt faster. The trees walked by in a blur of gray and black. On either side of the narrow track, things began to appear nailed to the trunk. They were not standard government signs. They were hand-painted on rotting plywood. Keep out. No trespassing. Turn back. Some of them were so old the wood had turned gray and the red paint looked like dry blood. I told myself they were just scare tactics from some recluse holding one hikers on his land. But my stomach tightened. 10 minutes in, the use shifted from mental to physical. Air in the car chan. I had the heat cranked up to 75 degrees, blowing full blast at my feet, but a creeping chill started to seep through the floorboards. It wasn't a draft. It felt like the ambient temperature of the world outside was sucking the heat right out of the metal chassis. I could see my breath misting in the red glow of the dashboard lights. I reached out to ask the vent, and that is when I noticed the silence. I rolled down the window just a crack, needing to hear the reassuring sound of whiner and owl or even a distant coil. I needed to know the world was still alive. But when the glass lit down, there was nothing. No wind rustling the leaves. No insects. No graining of wood. It was a vacuum. The only sound was the crunch of my tires, which seemed deafeningly loud, like I was crushing bones. I rolled to window up fast and locked to the doors. It was an irrational lock stop the cold, and they don't stop the sounds, but the sound put it annoy. I looked at the phone mounted on the dash. The signal bars were gone, replaced by a small X, but the GPS app was still running. Hat was normal GPS works off satellites, not cell towers. But the data on the screen was wrong. The map showed the blue arrow moving through a blank gray void. The estimated time of arrival read 0 minutes, but the distance remaining read 20 miles. 20 miles in 0 minutes. I tapped the screen. It didn't respond. It was frozen. I must have lost the satellite, Lee whispered. My voice sounded flat in the cold car, like it was being absorbed by the upholstery. I kept driving because turning around on a road this narrow was impossible. I had to find a clearing. To my right, the headlight swept over a lemur. It was an old tractor, an international harvester from maybe the 1950s. It was rusted to a dip, flaky orange, and it was half swallowed by peppery bushes. It was missing its front left wheel, and the seat was twisted at an odd angle, like something had wrapped it upward. I made a mental note of it. A landmark man I was grounded in reality. It was a physical object in a physical world. I drove for another 5 minutes. The road twisted and turned, defying the geography of the mountain. The cold was biting now. I was shivering in my jacket. Then the road banked sharp right again. My headlights swept the brush. Here, in the exact same position, half swallowed by the exact same blackberry bushes, was the tractor, rusted orange, missing the front left wheel. Seat twisted upward. I slammed on the brakes. The car skidded on the mud, sliding sideways before coming to a halt just inches from the ditch. I sat there, breathing hard. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Impossible, I said. I looked in the rearview mirror. Darkness. I looked forward. The tractor sat there, silent and dead in the beams of my lights. Had I driven in a circle? No. The road had been a straight shot of hill. There were no forks. No lips. I had been climbing elevation the entire time. I looked at the GPS game. The screen flickered. The text changed. Arrival in 0 minutes. Distance remaining 10 miles. The map was decaying. The logic of the road was breaking down. I wasn't just lost, I was driving up to a place where the distance between 2 points was subjective. I looked at the passenger seat. The package. The brown paper seemed to be absorbing the light from the dashboard. It looked darker than the saddles around it. And for a split second, I thought I saw the paper ripple like something inside was taking a breath. I looked away, squeezing the steering wheel until my hands hurt. Just turn around. My brain screamed. Just back up all the way to the highway. But I cannons. I felt the pull. A heavy, magic sensation in the center of my chest. It was the same feeling you get when you stand on the edge of a high cliff, the terrifying, irrational urge to lean forward. I took my foot off the brake. I pressed the gas. I steered the car past the tractor for the second time. As I paced it, the radio turned itself on. It wasn't static this time. It was a voice. It was low, garbled, and bright under layers of white noise, but I could make out the cadence. It was a loop. You have arrived, the voice said. You have arrived. You have arrived. I looked through the windshield. The trees abruptly stopped. I hit the brakes again. The road ended. It didn't fade out, it was simply cut off. The gravel stopped in a perfect line, and by it lay a paved, circular driveway. And in the center of the driveway, surrounded by miles of hostile, empty wilderness, sat a house. It was a ranch-style house, the kind you would see in a catalog from 1955. The siding was a pristine, creamy white. The roof was tiled in neat, unblemished shingles. Here was a manicured lawn, the Cresca to a perfect, uniform height, glowing an unnatural emerald green in my headlights. It looked like someone had cut a piece of suburbia out of a magazine and passed it onto the dark, chaotic background of the forest. The contrast was nationing. The woods around it were wide, overgrown and rotting, smelling of wet earth and decay. But the house, it smelled like nothing. It looked sterile. Every light in the house was on. The windows blazed with a yellow, sickly intensity that didn't cast shadows so much as it erased them. It was like looking into the heart of a light bulb. I paused the car in park, but I didn't kill the engine. I wasn't that spit. I kept the headlights on, aiming them at the front door. I grabbed the package. It was vibrating. At first, I thought it was just the engine of the car vibrating the seat, but when I lifted the box, I felt it buzzing into my palm. A low, steady hum, like a high-tension wire. I opened the car door. The silence of the outside world rushed in to meet me. It was absolute. There was no hum from the house lights, no rustle of the grass. It was a vacuum of sound. I stepped onto the driveway. The pavement was dry. I looked back at my car. It was soaking wet, dripping rain onto the gravel. But here, 10 feet away, the ground was bone dry. The rain stopped exactly at the property line, as if there were an invisible glass dome over the lot. I walked toward the front door. The air changed instantly. The ozone smell hit me sharp, metallic, like a thunderstorm trapped in a bottle. Underneath it was something else. Burned hair. I walked up the concrete path. My footsteps made no sound. I looked down at my boots. I was walking, my heels were striking the concrete, but the sound was delayed before it could reach my ears. It disoriented me, making me feel weightless. I reached the door. It was solid oak, painted a cheerful, glossy red. Here was a brass knocker in the shape of a lion's head. I raised my hand to knock, but before my knuckles could graze the wood, the door clicked. It swung inward, slowly, silently. Hello, I called out. My voice sounded flat, dead. No answer. I stepped onto the threshold. I didn't want to go in, but the pull was stronger now. The packet in my hand felt heavy, dense, like it was pulling my arm down. I peered into the hallway. The interior was wrong. It was furnished. Yes. Here was a coat rack, a side table with a vase of flowers, a mirror on the wall. But everything was simplified. The coat rack was dice brown pole with Hicks-elect texture. The flowers were perfect chimchick shapes, too smooth. The mirror didn't reflect me. It reflected the wall behind me. I took a step inside. Delivery, I said, louder this time. From the living room to my left, I heard a sound. It was the sound of a television, played at very low volume. A loud track. Canned, repetitive flutter. I walked toward the sound. I entered the living room. A television set sat in the corner, a heavy CRT model from the 90s. The screen was static, gray snow flickering rapidly. But the sound wasn't static. It was louder. Ha. Hey? Ha. Ha. Here was a sofa in the center of the room, facing away from me. Sitting on the sofa was a figure. It was a man wearing a gray suit. He was perfectly still. His head was tilted slightly to the right, as if he were listening intently to the static. Sir, I said, I have a packet for. Route 9. The figure didn't move. I walked around the side of the sofa, keeping my distance. When I saw his face, my blood turned to ice. He didn't have a face. It wasn't that he was injured or deformed. It was just smooth, like a thumb. Where his eyes, nose, and mouth should have been, there was just pale, unblemished skin. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. I dropped the package. The box hit the floor. It didn't make a thud. It made a sound like glass shattering. The brown paper split open. I looked down. Here was no object inside. No merchandise. Rolling out of the torn paper were teeth. Hundreds of them. Teeth. Molars, cannons, and scissors. They scattered across the carpet like white gravel. And among the teeth was a single, small object. It was a keychain. A cheap, plastic keychain with a logo on it. I recognized it instantly. It was my keychain. The one I had lost 3 years ago on a camping trip in Idaho. The one with the faded picture of a dog I had as a kid. I stared at it, my mind reeling, trying to process the impossibility. The louder from the television stopped. The silence returned, heavier than before. The man with no face stood up. He moved jerkily, like a stop-motion animation, missing frames. He turned a smooth, blank head toward me. And then, a slit opened in the skin where his mouth should be. It tore open with a wet, ripping sound. You are late, the thing said. It wasn't a voice. It was my voice. It was a recording of me speaking. Playback throw a distorted folder. You are late, Elias. The lights in the house flickered and died. Total darkness engulfed the room. The only light came from the static on the television screen, casting strobing gray shadows across the faceless man. I didn't think. I didn't scream. My body just wrecked it. I turned and ran. I sprinted for the door, my boot slamming silently against the floor. I could hear movement behind me. Not footsteps. A sliding sound, like wet meat being dragged across the carpet. I burst out the front door and onto the porch. The world outside had changed. The driveway was gone. My car was gone. In front of me was not the forest I had driven through. It was the hallway. I was soaring back into the house I had just entered. I spun around. Behind me was the hallway. To my left, the hallway. To my right, the hallway. The house had unfolded. It had wrapped itself around me. I was standing in an infinite loop of beige walls and coat racks. No, I whispered. I looked down at the floor. The teeth were there, scattered around my feet. The sliding sound was getting closer. It was coming from all directions, Annans. I closed my eyes. I thought of the tractor, the landmark, the one real thing in this nightmare. I focused on that rust-orange metal. I focused on the smell of the damn earth. I ran. I ran blindly into one of the hallways, smashing my shoulder against the wall, stumbling, getting up, and running in. I ran until my lungs burned. I ran until the beige walls started to blur. And then I felt rain. Cold, freezing rain hitting my face. I opened my eyes. I was lying in the mud. I was on my hands and knees in the ditch. Liker was 10 feet away, the engine running, the headlights cutting through the fog. I was back at the tractor. I scrambled up, slipping in the mud, and threw myself at the car door. I ripped it open and dove inside, locking it instantly. I slammed the gearshift into rubbers. The tires spun, spraying mud before finding purchase. I backed down the road, driving faster than I should have, caroning off the trees, scraping the paint, not caring. I didn't stop until I hit the pavement of the main road. I didn't stop until I saw the lights of a gas station 10 miles later. I sat in the brightly lit Ford car, under the buzzing fluorescent canopy, and I shook. I shook for an hour. I looked at the passenger seat. It was empty. But on the floor mat, half hidden under the seat, was something small. I reached down and picked it up. It was the keychain. My keychain. I turned it over in my trembling hands. The plastic was warm. I looked at the delivery app on my phone. The screen was black. The app had uninstalled itself. But there was a notification in my bank account. Deposit received $300. Sender railed 9 logistics. I threw the keychain in the trash can at the gas station. I drove home. I never worked for that app Avine. But sometimes, when I am driving alone at night, and the radio signal starts to fade, I can feel it. The pull, the silence, and you know that somewhere off the map, the door is still open, and the delivery is still marked as incomplete. So, the next time you see a road that isn't on the map, or a package that feels too light or a pail that seems too good to be true, keep driving, because some addresses aren't places. They are traps. This is the Mistress Namit, signing off. If you want to keep these locks open, leave a like and subscribe to Grim Rimrelet Lags. Let me know in the comments which story kept you up tonight. Stay safe.